Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar presented by Private College 529 Plan. I'm Mark Sir with Saving for College. Really excited to have Joanne and Jonathan here to share a little bit about Private College 529 Plan, one of the really unique programs out there. So I'm really excited about this as an educational opportunity for myself. It's going to be a great opportunity for you all to familiarize yourself with this plan. I do want to remind everybody that this session is going to be recorded, so if you miss anything, you need to cut out early, no problem. We'll take care of that for you. You'll get that recording a little bit later today so that you can get all of the information that you need. And feel free to use that Q&A function there at the bottom of your screen. If you've got some questions for the group, please do ask them. It can benefit everybody. So please participate. We really appreciate that. So I will be quiet now. I'll turn it right over to Joanne. Thank you so much to Private College 529 Plan for presenting this webinar. It's a great opportunity for everybody to learn about it. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Mark, and to Saving for College for hosting this webinar and for inviting us to speak with your families today. My name is Joanne Dashiell with CollegeWell and Private College 529 Plan, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jonathan Sparling. We are going to do our best to address the frequently asked questions that we tend to get for this plan, but we would encourage you to please submit questions through that Q&A feature, and we will do our best to incorporate those questions into the session today and also respond right in that Q&A that you see there at the bottom of your screen as we continue. And we do plan to have time at the end to address any additional questions that come up. So again, please do not hesitate. Don't hold back on any questions that you have. Here are the items that we plan to cover today. We're going to give you an overview of Private College 529 Plan and how it was started over 20 years ago now. We'll walk through how it works, as well as provide some savings examples and some strategies, helping you understand how you could fit Private College 529 Plan into your college savings portfolio. And as I mentioned, we will recap on those plan benefits, what makes Private College 529 Plan unique and different from other 529 options, and we'll cover those frequently asked questions. But again, don't hesitate throughout the session or at the end to throw your questions right into that Q&A feature. So to get started with how Private College 529 Plan came about, over 20 years ago, so actually in 1998, a group of private colleges got together and created Tuition Plan Consortium as a way to address college affordability. And they set out with three guiding or driving principles, and that was to help families save for college, but also to help families save on the cost of college. So college expenses were more manageable for families. And then in creating a savings plan, it was really important to the consortium to allow families to use their savings at a broad range of institutions of all different sizes and all different types across the country. So a lot of options in terms of flexibility for using that prepaid tuition. 5 short years later, Private College 529 Plan was born. It was initially launched under Independent 529, so you may be familiar with a different name, but now we are called Private College 529 Plan, and it's been that way for over 15 years now. And in our 20-year history, we have helped families redeem over $200 million at our member institutions. It's really exciting to see families using and benefiting the plan in that way, taking full advantage of their prepaid tuition. So Private College 529 Plan is a prepaid tuition plan. Many families are familiar with 529 savings and investing plans. Every state, and virtually every state except for one, offers its own 529 savings and investing plan. And your deposits to your account in those plans are tied to market fluctuations, right? Market increases, but also potentially market losses. So they're tied to the market. 529 prepaid plans are a little different. With prepaid plans, your contributions or deposits to your account are actually prepaying and locking in tuition to be used in the future. Now, there are only a handful of states that currently offer prepaid plans, and most of those are offered for in-state public colleges and universities and traditionally geared to in-state residents. And again, there are just a handful of states right now, under 10, that still offer a 529 prepaid plan. Private College 529 plan is the national option that allows families to save for private colleges across the country. We have nearly 300 private colleges in the network, and you can find that list online by visiting privatecollege529plan.com. Now, what's unique about Private College 529 is that, unlike some of the other plans, the colleges and universities that opened this plan over 20 years ago, they own, they run, they manage the plan, and they also guarantee families prepaid tuition for up to 30 years. And because growth in your account is tied to tuition increases, as tuition increases, so does the value of your prepaid tuition, and that's guaranteed by the colleges and universities. There is no market risk on your contributions. And again, no state residency requirements to save. It is the national prepaid plan, again, for a network of nearly 300 private colleges and universities. Private College 529 isn't all that we do. College Well is our parent brand, and that is and our mission with College Well is to help make college more affordable for families by helping them plan and save for college. And we do that by bringing in the experts that are working with families day in and day out and helping them understand, what college savings vehicle is right for them. So financial advisors that you would typically ask those questions to, as well as folks that sit on the campuses of our member colleges and universities. These are admissions, these are financial aid folks, enrollment management folks that stay up to date on the trends regarding college admissions and college financial aid, just to help families navigate that process all the way through from when the baby is born up until college enrollment. So we would encourage you also to visit collegewell.com and navigate through all of the resources that we have available. Of course, these are free resources under our mission just to help families make the best plan for themselves in terms of saving and paying for college. So with that introduction, I just want to turn it now over to Jonathan, who's going to run through the plan details and also provide some savings examples and scenarios for you.
Great. Well, thank you, Joanne, and welcome to everyone. And thank you for joining us today to learn about Private College 529 plan. So if you're familiar with prepaid plans, they do come in slightly different flavors just in terms of kind of how they're offered. And so I'm going to walk through how it works saving in our particular plan, both saving in 1 year, one plan year, and then over multiple years, and then give you a little behind the scenes of what it looks like if you are an account owner. So the first step, obviously, in saving in our plan is opening an account. This can be done online. You're going to identify that account owner, the person opening the account. Typically, it is the parent of the student that they're saving for, but more and more we are seeing some grandparents and others outside of that parent role open that account as the account owner for the student that they're saving for. You're going to assign a beneficiary. Again, that's the student that you're saving for. And then you're going to make that initial deposit. Now, the nice thing about our plan, just like other 529 plans, is that there's multiple ways to make contributions. Most often people are making them just right online, certainly. But that's obviously the most common way. And then in terms of kind of ongoing contributions, there are multiple ways to do that in our plan. So if you want to do monthly contributions, quarterly, annually, whatever it might be. So the kind of moving forward with that is that when you're saving in that plan, or step 2 is going to save in our plan. Now, every deposit, because ours is a prepaid plan, every deposit is locking in a percentage of a year of tuition and fees at each college in the plan. And this is one of the unique features of our plan as well. Because we're working with close to 300 private colleges, and this is a prepaid plan, your contributions are locking in a different percentage of tuition and fees because they all cost different. Now, typically we get this question right now, how do I know what every college costs? we have that outlined for you in our pricing guide. So again, within the planned year, you're locking in that percentage. So for anyone that's saving now, they're locking in that percentage of the 2024 2025 tuition and fee rates. Now, all contributions throughout the plan year, which runs July 1st to June 30th, at the end of that plan year, they're aggregated into a tuition certificate. You don't get an actual certificate. That's just the instrument kind of behind the scenes that you're saving for. And that certificate's going to have a slightly different value for each college in the plan because, again, they all cost different. Tuition and fee rates reset on July 1st. So we're talking about this in middle of April. As you can imagine, end of April, May, June is where we get a lot of folks saving in our plan because they're wanting to make contributions before those rates reset. So let's kind of take this example through and kind of show you how that locking in works differently at every school. So let's say that you made a total contributions, either a single contribution or multiple contributions within the plan year that totaled 30,000. Now you might be sitting there 30,000, that's a lot of money. Absolutely. You can sub in any amount that you would fit into your college savings cash flow and your own objectives. So the percentage of annual tuition that $30,000 is going to lock in is going to be different at each college in the plan. And we're just giving 3 examples here. But again, 30,000 where college X costs 30,000, you're going to be locking in 1 full year or 100% of 1 year of tuition and mandatory fees. College Y, that happened to cost 40,000, that 30,000 is locking you in 75%. College Z, that costs 60,000, 50%, and so on and so forth. This calculation is happening for every college in the plan. Now, I will mention at this point too, when you open an account with us and you start saving behind the scenes, you can track up to 10 institutions at one time. And so you can see kind of where your savings and how much you're saving at each institution. Those 10 colleges can be changed out at any time because the feature of this plan, again, is that you're not choosing which college you want to use these funds at. You are saving for all of the colleges simultaneously. That's where the percentage calculation comes in. All right, so let's pretend you made 1 contribution or total contributions in 1 plan year. Step 3 would be after a certain number of years, you can begin redeeming your prepaid tuition. You can start redeeming your prepaid tuition after your child enrolls in a member college. Again, you're not choosing which school until your child actually goes to that school. And the value of your prepaid tuition is going to depend on how long you've held your certificates and the annual increase in tuition and mandatory fees. So simply stated, if tuition had gone up 4% per year at the college that you were tracking or that your child actually goes to, the value of your certificate would increase 4% per year tax-free. And so kind of carrying this forward and looking at this from a graphical representation, let's go back to that first example where we were saying that with that first contribution of 30,000, if you recall, college B in our example, or college, I think Y, it might have been cost 40,000. And so 30,000 was locking you in at 75% of tuition and fees when it cost 40,000. 10 years down the road, if you made no additional contributions to your plan and assuming 4% tuition increase year over year, well, the future cost of 1 year at college Y is now $59,210. But because you still own 75% of tuition and mandatory fees, the value of your prepaid plan or of your certificate equates to 75% of that 59,210 or 44,407. So for you, that means just under 14,500 in tuition or tax-free growth that you've experienced by prepaying tuition. And again, that's assuming kind of 4% year over year. We know that some institutions on our plan are going up more than that. Some are going up less. But that's kind of that representation of what you would get from a redeemable value 10 years in the future. So that's saving in the plan in 1 year. Let's look at an example or walk through an example if you saved over multiple plan years. And again, this is how most folks in our plan are saving. They're saving over multiple years. And again, this is where that percentage comes in, and it's all about locking in a percentage over multiple years. So let's kind of go back to plan year one. In this scenario, you're opening an account with $10,000. Current tuition mandatory fees, you can see there are 30,000, 40, and 60 at college X, Y, and Z. I was right. It was college Y that we were saying. So your 10,000 is going to lock in a slightly or a smaller percentage at each one of these institutions. And you can see based on, again, their stated rates, you're contributing 10,000, so you're locking in 33% at college X, 25 at college Y, and 17 at college Z. Let's move to plan year two. Plan year two, you make another $10,000 contribution. And again, this could be a lump sum or spread out the totality of contributions in the plan year. If we assume a 4% annual increase, the current tuition mandatory fees at college X, Y, and Z are now higher. 31.2, 41.6, and 62.4. So your 10,000 is locking you in a slightly smaller percentage or slightly less because same capital contributions, but again, costs have gone up. So in plan year two, you've locked in 32%, 24%, or 16%. But in total, you can see kind of what you've locked in at each one of these schools by just adding those together. You can see where we're going. Move on to plan year three. You make another $10,000 contribution. We assume 4% increase again at each one of these institutions. And so those are the new rates within that plan year. You make another $10,000 contribution and you can see what you've locked in total at college X, Y, and Z. So we'll assume in this example that you stop making contributions in your plan after 3 years and it's now time to redeem. And so 10 years later, from the time that you first started saving in the plan, you now own a certain percentage of tuition and mandatory fees at each one of these colleges. And although you've made the same contributions, total contributions, 10,000 versus the first example you made 30,000, it's spread out over multiple plan years. And so when you go to redeem 10 years in the future, again, at college Y, you now are going to own 72% of that future value at college Y, which again, if we move to the next slide, you're going to see that 72%, unlike in that first example where you were locking in that 75%, because you locked in that 72%, or you still own that 72% in the future, when your child enrolls at college Y, it's still going to be that same future tuition cost of $59,210, but your redeemable value is going to be 72% of 1 year. Still a significant amount of savings here and growth in your plan, just over $12,600, but slightly less. So just to kind of recap the value and the uniqueness here is that regardless of if you make those contributions in one plan year or you make contributions over multiple plan years, because you're locking in that percentage, it's going to grow in value as those tuition increases go up. So you're probably saying to yourself, all right, if I'm going to save over multiple plan years, that's a lot to track. And how do I know the percentage at each school and so on and so forth? Thankfully, that is one of the features of the account or your account where you're being presented with all this information. So this is a little bit behind the scenes, under the hood, what it looks like inside your private college 529 account. And what we do here is that we're actually going to show you all of your savings aggregated over the multiple plan years that you saved. So very briefly here, up top is going to be basic demographic information, beneficiary name, who you have as the account owner and the successor account owner. And then that account summary section is where we talk a little bit more about how much, or we show you how much you've made in total contributions, and we start to introduce the concept of the eligibility date for your certificates, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But that first column there, that program year, that's synonymous with plan year. So that is the year that you saved in the plan. And then gross and net contributions are always going to be the same. There are no direct fees to you. So if you make $10,000 in total contributions, $10,000 is buying or locking in that percentage of tuition and fees. Now that last column, that certificate eligibility date, this has to do with one of the stipulations of the program. So in order to use your prepaid tuition or your tuition certificates, those certificates must be held for 36 months before they're eligible to be used in a redemption scenario. And the clock starts for those redemptions based on the first contribution within the plan year. So this is a little bit, behind the scenes, but basically if you made a contribution as this account owner did on July 2nd of 2018, 36 months from then would be July 2nd, 2021. And you can see that's that first eligibility date to use that tuition certificate. This really only comes into play or becomes more of a factor for late stage saving. And as you're getting closer to drawing down those funds, thinking, sophomore, junior, even senior year of high school to be used for later years of college. But that's what that certificate eligibility date is showing you there. So for this account owner, you can see that they made different contribution amounts in every plan year, which is another nice feature, again, based on your own cash flow, what you can contribute. In the 18-19 plan year, they made $6,500 in total contributions, 2021 a little bit more, 21-22, so on and so forth. And so their total contributions just over $60,000. If you continue down the path of your account, the next section is really kind of where the rubber meets the road. And you are seeing, based on the 10 schools that you can track, how many years of tuition you have locked in. And this is really good for modeling purposes as well. Again, you can change out those 10 institutions at any time. And again, based on how much you've made in contributions over however many plan years you've been saving. So in this example, the account owner has been saving over 6 plan years. They made different contributions in each one of those plan years, and that locked them in at a different percentage of tuition and fees at each one of the institutions in the plan. This is where we aggregate it all together. And so that second column there, that years of tuition purchased, that is how many years, based, where 1 equals 1 full year, whole number, they've locked in at each one of these institutions. So you can see they've locked in a little more at Georgetown University than they have at Amherst, a little less at Amherst than they have at Notre Dame, a little more at Princeton, and so on and so forth. And so that is, again, saving over multiple plan years where it all comes together in terms of how many years of tuition you have purchased. Quickly, the last 2 columns, that value of tuition purchase, that represents the current tuition within the plan year. So in this case, 23-24 multiplied by your years of tuition purchase. So that would be essentially a cash value. And then the final column is that years of tuition available. This brings into the concept of that 36-month hold. And so once you've satisfied the 36-month hold for each one of those years that you've saved in the plan, the years of tuition available is going to match the years of tuition purchase, so you can use all of your tuition certificates at any one of the institutions. So this is, again, really good from a modeling perspective and where you can see kind of where your saving is going and how many years of tuition you've locked in at each one of our member schools. So I want to turn it back over to Joanne right now, and she's going to walk through a little more about why this plan, who's saving in this plan, some other kind of main benefits of the plan, and addressing some of those frequently asked questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for the examples. And we'll provide a couple of more examples as we go along. As Jonathan said, keep the questions coming. I want to jump into now, as Jonathan mentioned, different scenarios and how we see families currently using Private College 529 plan. We do have both parents and grandparents opening accounts for kids as soon as they're born. In fact, grandparents do love Private College 529 plan, especially if they don't want to worry about market volatility. They want that gift to be there for their grandchild when college comes. And so for that reason, and for the no market volatility, they tend to gravitate toward prepaid plans like Private College 529. And we do see families opening accounts when their child is first born or very young in the first few years of life. And this could be a parent who attended one of our member institutions and has those same aspirations for their child. We also have families, and I'm glad we saw this question come through in the Q&A feature. The question was, can families use both 529 plans? We already have a 529 savings plan that we've been that we've been funding, and that is great. That is, and we're so happy to hear that, because saving for college and you know is really the point. And so we're just happy to hear that families are saving, and especially taking advantage of tax advantage 529 plans. But the truth is that you can use multiple 529 plans, and in most cases, you're not limited to your state 529 plan. And so you can incorporate private college 529 if you think that your child will be eventually applying and attending one of our member institutions. You can save for a private college 529 plan to lock in tuition rates to use at any of the nearly 300 participating private colleges and universities, and you're not subject to market fluctuations with private college 529 plan, but it is used for tuition and fees only. So like I do, I'm the parent of 2 children, and they each have a private college 529 account, but I also use my state-based 529 savings and investing plan. So I'm balanced in terms of my portfolio. I have some market risk, but then I don't have any market risk with private college 529 plan, and I can use that traditional savings and investing plan for other qualified education expenses like food and housing, like books and supplies, et cetera. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to speak with a financial advisor and talk about your personal circumstances and your situation to determine really what is the best path, what is the best portfolio for us based on where we think our child is going to be going to school in the future. As Jonathan mentioned before, we do offer exceptional protection for families that have children in high school. Perhaps you have been saving in a 529 investment or saving plan, but you see that your child is likely going to apply to one or multiple colleges that are on the private college 529 list. You could roll funds over without any tax penalties. You could roll funds over from your savings and investing plan to lock in tuition at those institutions and still leave money in your 529 savings plan to use for some of those other expenses. And because it's all under the 529 umbrella, there are no, as I mentioned, penalties for that type of rollover. Or we have families who have been saving in a 529 traditional savings account all along and then decide to open and just also start saving in PC 529 without rolling over or transitioning any funds. What's important to mention here is that 36-month hold period before you can start to use funds. So there is a little bit of planning that is involved. And again, a really great idea to speak with a financial advisor about your particular situation to make sure that you're taking full advantage of all of these opportunities. Let's jump back into some savings examples here and focusing on the parent of a high school senior, for example. So let's say that you have a senior right now, and we're pretty close to that May 1 decision deadline, right? Just a couple of weeks away. Families and students are going to have to decide of all of the institutions that they have been admitted to, where are we going to go? We have seen families, once they decide where their child is going to go to school, if it is a private college 529 member institution, at that point to open an account and to lock in tuition and fees to use for the senior year of college. So because of that 36-month hold period, the funds wouldn't be able to be used until the senior year of college. So you do have to make sure that you are planning accordingly for that 36-month clock to begin so that you can use it in time. But it is a great way to hedge against tuition increases, which tend to happen even when the student is enrolled. Once you're enrolled, their tuition increases still tend to happen, and to lock in the tuition rates to use for the later year. Now, as Jonathan mentioned, you do not have to lock in the full year of tuition and fees. And in fact, because of merit scholarship opportunities or need-based grants from the institution or from the federal government, most families don't have to lock in the full year of tuition, right? So here's an example where a family had a $10,000 gap in their bill. for the next year, and they want to open a PC 529 account and contribute $10,000 to lock in just that $10,000 that they know they're going to have to, again, come up with in the senior year, and locking that in, knowing that there are likely going to be tuition increases in that sophomore, junior, and senior year, and that $10,000 deposit is going to lock in this example, 20% of the current annual tuition and fees. At this example, this college and university costs $50,000. So a $10,000 contribution is going to lock in 20%. Now, by the time the student is a senior in college, and with a 4% increase annually in tuition and fees, they don't always increase at the same rate equally, but just for example, demonstration purposes today, we're assuming it's 4% each year over the next 3 years. So by the time they're a college senior, that tuition is going to increase to $56,243. You still own 20%. So the college or university is going to credit your account when you redeem your prepaid tuition, the value that you locked in. They don't reduce the bill for you. They credit the value of your prepaid tuition. They're going to bill all the students the same. So that 20% in 3 years is now equal to $11,249, and that's $1,249 in growth. And you can think of this like a tax-free scholarship in the senior year of college, right? A $1,200 scholarship would be a very welcomed increase to have, right? Increased resource to have in the senior year. And so if you think about it like that, hedging against those tuition increases sort of delivers that same benefit. We had an account owner share a similar strategy with us, sort of allowing them to use their locked-in tuition a little bit earlier. So instead of waiting to see where the student is admitted toward the end of their senior year or in the spring of the senior year, they had an idea, or they knew what colleges their rising senior was going to be applying to. So this could work really well for a high school junior going into their senior year, where again, if they know they're going to be applying to a number of institutions that are on the Private College 529 member list, could open an account after the start of the plan year, so after July 1, and contribute to that account to start that 36-month clock. And the amount that you contribute doesn't matter as much, regardless of the amount that you're contributing at the beginning of the year, you're starting the clock. That 36-month clock, as Jonathan explained, starts or is triggered by that initial contribution, by the first contribution in that plan year. So any additional or subsequent contributions that you make during the plan year all sort of roll back to that initial eligibility date. So in this example that the account owner shared with us, they opened the account with a small amount to just start that clock. And then once the decisions started coming out for colleges and universities, they realized, oh, my kid is going to go to one of these institutions. And so before the plan year ended on June 30th, they locked in a considerable amount of tuition and fees that they knew that they could use a little bit earlier because they started that 36-month clock earlier. Again, another opportunity either to reach out directly to one of us, either myself or Jonathan. We can kind of walk you through the nuances and how to take advantage of this. And certainly a financial advisor as well would be more than happy to help you kind of decide how much should we be contributing based on expected financial aid or merit scholarship opportunities that might be awarded from the institution. Of course, we want to factor those in. Keep the questions coming. I know that Jonathan is responding to those as we continue throughout the presentation, but I do want to recap on some of the plan benefits that are unique to Private College 529 plan. And one of those is that our private colleges and universities that participate, unlike any other 529 plan, they own the plan, they operate the plan, and they guarantee your prepaid tuition for up to 30 years. And the great news is that, as Jonathan mentioned in earlier and showed you within the account plan section on the account owner portal, you have flexibility to use your prepaid tuition at any of the 300 colleges and universities nationwide. So you do not have to know where your child is going to go to school when they enroll or when you enroll in the plan. There are 0 fees for this plan. So every dollar that you contribute or deposit to your account is locking in tuition and fees on a percentage basis at all of the colleges and universities that participate at the same time. And like we described before, as opposed to other 529 savings and investment plans, there is 0 market risk. There are also no income limits or income phase outs, and very generous account contribution caps. So again, also important to speak with a financial advisor regarding tax and estate planning and gifting limits, but there are no annual contribution limits, just a contribution cap, and a lot of flexibility with private college 529 plans. So you can open an account with as little as $25, and you can contribute over the life of that account up to the total amount of 5 years of our 5 total years at our most expensive institution. That happens to change every year as we collect tuition and fees. We determine what is the most expensive institution, and the account cap is 5 years at that current rate. Right now, it's over $360,000. So again, a lot of flexibility for you to determine what makes the most sense in terms of locking in how much prepaid tuition you want to lock in. Like other 529 plans, there are very generous tax benefits. So accounts grow tax deferred like every other 529 plan, and distributions are tax-free as long as they are used for a qualified education expense. And that is true even if you don't use your prepaid tuition at a member institution. So we always get the question about, what happens when my child doesn't go to a PC 529 member school, and we'll address that on the next slide. But first, I want to just sort of reiterate. So we've covered a lot of these already, but jump into some of the frequently asked questions and make sure we have plenty of time for any additional questions that you may have at the end. So while you don't have to know where your child is going to go to school when you open an account, we do ask you to select at least one of our member institutions for you to track your prepaid tuition against. So based on the year that you contributed, just as Jonathan showed within the account, when you log in, we need you to select at least one institution that we can provide, the amount of prepaid tuition that you've locked in at that school. And you can select up to 10 colleges and universities. You can change those at any time if you want to see how much tuition you've locked in at any of our member institutions. And as we showed in the variety of examples and savings examples, you do not have to prepay or lock in an entire year of tuition. You could open an account with $1,000, $2,000 if you wanted to, and that's going to lock in a smaller percentage of prepaid tuition, but you do not, but every dollar counts, right? And that's sort of how we approach this. So the guidance is to lock in as much as you can, as early as you can, to benefit from years of locked in tuition. But you can contribute, as Jonathan described, over multiple years to make that work within your budget. You certainly do not have to lock in a full year of tuition. And each year you can contribute a different amount based on what makes sense for you and for your plan. Here's some really exciting benefits for account owners, and that's if a school joins the plan, as well as what happens if a school leaves the plan. And fortunately, that doesn't happen often. But if a new school joins the plan, any tuition that you locked in prior to that school joining is going to lock in tuition for that year rates. For those year rates, even at that new school. So when a new school joins, we collect their tuition and fees going back to when the plan opened in 2003. And so even if families had started contributing to their account in 2004 or 2005, those families are going to will have already locked in those years' rates, depending on how much they contributed, of course, but in the 2005, 2006 year rates for even those new institutions. If a school leaves the plan, and as I mentioned, this does not happen frequently, but if a school leaves the plan, they are still obligated to honor any tuition that was prepaid for up to 30 years after they leave the plan. But as long as that tuition was purchased when they were still participating in the plan, they are required to, and they're obligated to honor that prepaid tuition even after they leave the plan. We've spent a bit of time talking about how quickly you can redeem, but I just want to make sure that folks are aware, because it's really important for planning purposes, especially for families who have high school sophomores, juniors, and seniors, that you do need to wait 36 months in order to start redeeming your prepaid tuition at a member institution. And the eligibility date, the redemption eligibility date, is based on the first date in which a contribution was made in that plan year. And now jumping into one of the top questions that families have, what happens if my child, my son or daughter, does not go to one of the participating institutions on the list? And this is an important one because we set this up so families have flexibility, and you can get a full refund of your contributions plus up to 2% compounded annually on top of that. And so you get your full money back plus up to 2%, a little bit of growth there. And as I mentioned before, you can take that to any institution, whether it's a non-participating private college or university or a public college or university, or use that for any qualified expenses without any tax penalties, because all of those do fall under the 529 umbrella. Before we open it up for any additional questions that might have come through the chat, I just want to, again, encourage folks to take a look at the list of member colleges that are on our website. So you can visit privatecollege529.com and find the list from there. We also have a really great search tool where you can search for colleges based on academic programs, based on size, based on admission selectivity. And you'll find that we have quite a range of institutions, from your large research institutions to small liberal arts colleges on our list. We have institutions that are very selective, and the majority of our institutions do admit the majority of their applicants. So a lot of flexibility within the institutions that are on the list. Students will find the right fit for them within our member institutions. There's a school for everyone on the list. And I want to leave you here as we open it up for questions with our website on the screen, so that you can find that list very easily. Also would encourage you, when you're online, to go to the homepage on College Well and to sort through all of the education and the guidance and advice that we have on all of these topics. And we don't just talk about Private College 529 plan as a savings solution. We talk about all savings vehicles, 529 investment plans, 529 prepaid plans, the differences, the similarities, the nuances, all to just help families put together a plan that's going to work well for them. So I would encourage you to take full advantage of those resources. We have live sessions like these. We have recorded sessions. We have articles. We have videos. We have infographics. So all sorts of different ways to absorb and engage with the content. And it's our mission just to help families get on the right path to saving. So Jonathan, any questions that came through the chat that we didn't have a chance to cover in the session today?
So one question asked specifically about an institution that's part of the plan or that's not part of the plan, and that's Union College. So they are not a participant member of the plan right now. I will say that from a recruitment standpoint, we're constantly reaching out to non-member colleges to see if they would like to kind of join the consortium of schools. We like to say internally, this is something that we believe good colleges do and are part of this. And so we work with our board of directors to help kind of tap their colleagues. And then we're also kind of actively recruiting new institutions on an ongoing basis. So if there's a particular school that you don't see in the list and this seems somewhat of an attractive option to you, certainly feel free to reach out and we can, start a dialogue for sure. I think that was one question that came in.
There was also a comment too about if the student doesn't, or a question, if the student doesn't use their prepaid tuition at a member college or university, do they have to take a refund? And they don't. I should have mentioned that they can always, just like other 529 plans, you can change the beneficiaries. You don't use those years of locked-in tuition. That's my plan. So my oldest is 15, about to be 16. He's a sophomore in high school. And, we're putting together that college list right now. If he doesn't get into or doesn't decide to attend a private college 529 member institution, I am going to hold on to those, that prepaid tuition, and I will assign my daughter as the beneficiary so that, again, we're not losing out on the years of locked-in tuition, because I started contributing about 6 years ago. And of course, the tuition rates were very different then. I don't want to lose that. It's a really good question.
We had another question come in about talking about the uses of 529s. Traditional plans can also be used to fund secondary school. Does PC 529 allow that? So the answer is yes. We fall under the same regulations or rules as other 529 plans. And so one of the new benefits is that you can use up to $10,000 a year to pay for certain K through 12 expenses. And so that would be something that you could use your PC 529 account for. Again, in that scenario, the value that you're going to get is going to be that refund value. So it's going to be your contributions up to 2% compounded annually. So that would be the value on that. And certainly, understandably, folks need to use those funds for everything, but in the best value, the greatest value with our plan is to kind of use those funds in that redemption scenario. But you certainly could, because we do fall under the rules as any other 529 plan.
Right. There is a really great question about if you have a PC 529 account, so if you have prepaid tuition that you could use at any of these institutions, will that impact eligibility for grants and scholarships at the institution? And you report, when you complete the financial aid applications, and let's just talk about the FAFSA, the most common financial aid application that's used by all colleges and universities, the free application for federal student aid. It is just included in that total asset number, just like any other 529 plan. So the college doesn't know that you're coming in with a PC 529 account and prepaid tuition to use at their institution. So the package that they put together is going to be solely based on the income and the total assets. That formula that's used to determine the student aid index. They are not going to know specifically that you have a private college 529 account.
Good question. I know there's a question about kind of pros and cons of a trust owning 529 accounts. Personally, I guess I don't have a ton of knowledge related to kind of the pros and cons there. So I would, that's maybe something we could cover in a future session and do a little more research there. But I appreciate that question. But and that might be something that Saving for College covers as well on some of your content. So I appreciate you submitting that, but no real comment on that right now. Another question that came in, the unique benefits PC 529 is offering over the competitors. So I think that a lot of what we cover today and talking about that protection from market volatility, kind of that you're not exposed to market fluctuations, you really are tracking that tuition increases of those tuition inflation. I think that's kind of a big value proposition for our plan. When compared to other prepaids, obviously our nationwide scope, our close to 300 participating private colleges, the ability to use your funds at any future schools that join, I think would be another value there. And finally, I'll say is we always like to say this plan we think fits very well in conjunction with a larger college savings portfolio, larger savings strategy. And so I think that there was another question about kind of the value prop or the the tuition inflation rate being higher than returns. So, I think that there's, for families that are saving in this plan, and, just in speaking with our account owners, some surveys, I think many do view this, and we speak with advisors, and a lot of them view this as kind of that fixed income portion of the college savings portfolio, where in this, you're really preserving that capital because it's tracking tuition inflation, and it's used very well in conjunction with a traditional 529 plan. So I think, savers approach it, families approach it, all of you may approach it for a lot of different reasons, but we do find that balanced approach is a path that many will explore.
Got another really good question about how long after graduating high school does a student have to use the certificate? And there isn't a deadline related to high school graduation. Of course, there is that 36 months before you can use it, but really the deadline to use the funds is 30 years after the account was set up. So the prepaid tuition that you lock in is guaranteed for up to 30 years by the participating member colleges and universities. So you could retain the funds in that account. Again, if let's say the student that you intended as the beneficiary doesn't attend a member institution, and like the example that I shared before with my children, if my oldest doesn't end up attending a member institution, I'm going to switch the beneficiary to my daughter's name, and really have up to 30 years to use that prepaid tuition.
I had a question about average return in a market-based fund over 10 years compared to tuition increases. Don't have data on the 10-year market return fund, but I can't say that for our particular institutions. If we look at, and this is on our website, if we look at from the 23-24 to 24-25, both the average and the median is right around 4% in terms of across all of our institutions, the increase of tuition and fees from the 2023-2024 to 2024-2025 tuition and fees. Now, again, obviously that's average, and in this case, both median, but because, and this is, I think, maybe another value proposition of the plan, and kind of circling back to that other one, because your value is tied to the increase of the institution that you actually go to and not the average or an index, while that is the average or the median, certainly if you're choosing an institution that has experienced on the higher end or on the upper end of that, then your kind of value increase is going to be more than that. So that's I'll just throw that in there. But again, not sure about the 10-year market, but I can speak to specifically what we've seen with our institutions from 23-24 to 24-25. And we'll have that information on an ongoing basis. One of the things that we're doing right now, and I mentioned this earlier, is that we've got a lot of folks coming in and saving now, end of the plan year before rates reset, kind of added volatility that we're seeing in the markets right now. But also we are simultaneously collecting the rates, the tuition and fee rates for the next plan year, which going out to institutions right now, actively working with them, because on July 1st, 2025, you'll now be saving at, or your contributions are going to be locking in at the 25-26 tuition and fee rate. So once we collect all that data, that's something that we'll be able to report on later on, what we've seen both from an average and median increase from 24-25 to 25-26.
Got a question here about what the plan can be used for, and your contributions are locking in the current tuition and fees at the undergraduate level to be used for undergraduate tuition and fees. But you could take a refund and use those, and it would be that refund formula that I mentioned before, full refund of your contributions plus up to 2% compounded annually. And you could use that for graduate expenses, any graduate tuition expenses anywhere at any qualified educational institution under that 529 umbrella without any taxes or penalties. So for example, if a student doesn't attend, a member institution And again, you want to hold on to that to use for the graduate school. You could, or you could roll those funds into a state-sponsored 529 plan. It would be the refund value of that, however, and not the locked-in tuition value for graduate school or any of these other qualified expenses outside of tuition and fees at a member institution. Did you get a question too about state tax benefits? And this is when I would also encourage folks to talk to an advisor, because the state taxes state tax benefits do work a little bit differently. There are 30 states that offer state tax, a credit or a deduction for contributions to a 529 plan. Well, that's not offered federally. And then there are a handful of states, or actually 9 states right now, that offer that allow you to take advantage of your state tax credit for contributing to any 529 plan, while the others do limit contributions to in-state, to their state-sponsored plan.
Well, folks, we have just a couple more minutes here. I don't know if there are any more questions coming through the Q&A. Thank you so much for being such an engaged audience, joining us for an hour here on a Wednesday afternoon to make a better life for your family, for your children. I really appreciate you taking that time to get educated on this unique 529 plan offering. And super thanks to Jonathan and Joanne for this fantastic session. Super educational. And I hope everybody really did find it very helpful. We'll definitely share the recording. I know there were some requests for the slides, so we'll coordinate on getting all of that out. And I believe there's a follow-up email going to be sent out tomorrow with some more information on the plan, where some of you folks can maybe take action as well. Any closing thoughts, Joanne, Jonathan? Again, thank you so much. Thank you to your organization for sponsoring this webinar. I think it was a really great session and very helpful, for the folks that joined us today.
One thought that I have that I just want to share is that it's just great to know that families are planning to save regardless of where they save. What I like to say is that $1 saved is $1 less that you have to borrow, regardless of where and how you save. You can take advantage of all these tax advantage plans, but really the benefit is just setting aside money to use for college. And what that does is it provides options for you and the student when the decision time comes.
It's a great way to close it, Joanne.
Yeah,
Thank you
I think
so
that's
much.
great. I've got nothing more to say. So thanks again, Mark, and Saving for College.
Of course. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, folks. And we will be sharing that recording a little bit later tonight. So thank you all.